All right, welcome to another episode of Global Politics coming out of Africa, where we focus only on African topics and on topics around the world as long as they have a very big impact on what's going on in Africa. So today we're going to focus on Algeria. Algeria has had a windfall of money since the Russian war started against Ukraine because the sanctions meant that Russian gas wasn't going to Europe for cheap. So they were getting Algerian gas through the pipeline, which has brought a windfall of money for Algeria. And around that same period of 2021, 22, Algeria has started spending a lot of money on its military. They're going to spend I think it's $25 billion on their military next year, which will be a whopping 1/5 of their whole budget, twice as much as they spend on education. Um, I'm not judging Algeria here, so because this is a very complex world we live. They're right next to Morocco, so they have conflict with Morocco. Then at the same time, they have to worry about the Sahel, where France is pumping in a bunch of rebels and things, making the area unstable. So this could be Morocco's reason for spending so much on military. So we want to look at the complex problem that Algeria, that Algeria faces. They are buying a lot of weaponry from Russia. So we don't want a situation in which maybe arms sellers like Morocco's buying a bunch of weapons from the US and now Algeria is buying a bunch of weapons from Russia so that they can keep up with each other in an arms race. So we don't want a situation where Algeria is only getting lured into an arms race so that Russian, even though I'm stand with BRICS and Russia, but so that Russian and American businessmen can make money off of these weapons. You know, this shows to a point where it shows you how colonialism or imperial influences cause problems, because the problems between Morocco and Algeria, even though they're regionally tense, are also exacerbated by France and the Western world. And then Russia has to jump in and takes advantage of it by spending so much on Algeria. I mean, getting so much money from Algeria, getting money from Mali and these nations. So I'm not making any judgment calls here, but I think African nations should be wary of the manipulations of Western or maybe even Russia to cause tensions amongst you so that they can just make money off of your arms race or even your war. Because that money that Algeria is spending on its arms race is going to eat into a lot of the money that they are now making from selling gas to Europe, because they're now Europe's main supplier of gas because they don't get gas from Russia anymore. But funny enough, Russia's still making money off of this whole situation because they're spending money on Russian weapons. What are your thoughts, Kunle?
Yeah, you have to remember that Algeria and Morocco are former French-speaking colonies with
Yep.
strong ties to France, and
Yeah.
France in the sub-Saharan Sahel region are not just there, but they're also in the desert. That's where the French Foreign Legion is, and as we all know, it's become quite clear about France's links with ISIL and the French company Lafarge that was found to have been sponsoring ISIS and funding its operations. And these are security concerns. And then with the crises in the Middle East, I mean, Egypt is one of the closest countries to Algeria that's right on the border of that possible expansion of violence. I mean, if there is an impending world war, we're seeing two possible theaters, one in Europe and one in the Middle East into Africa that could be developing. And you know, when these
Yeah.
things become global, there's a domino of countries that start falling. Lots of countries start falling. You could even see the unbelievable. You can see them get as far as the doorsteps of, the French Sahel and sub-Saharan Africa and beyond. So yes, these countries are very concerned about the security, not just really of their own countries, but really of the region they're in. I mean, they're living around a cauldron of potential violence because to their south is ISIL and to their northeast is what's going on in the Middle East. So they have to be on their guard. So it is important that they do that. And also, they
Yeah.
are, as you said, a major transit route for oil that goes from Algeria through into Russia. And as you know, Russia has been supplying Europe with oil as using India as a third party to do so, and America is trying to come down hard on that, and that's going to affect those prices if America tries to do that. And you know, Germany is at the same time fighting Russia, but depending on Russian gas, which it also gets from France. So there's all these complicated economic twists and turns being mixed, but ultimately
Entanglement.
Western Europe is dependent on the Middle East, Africa, and Russia for all its resources, even when it's fighting against the people in these countries for whatever reasons, whether they claim to be good or bad. And that doubly complicates things. So, yeah, it's quite obvious that in such a fast paced developing world, Algeria needs to be well
Yeah.
armed. And the fact that they're
So
getting
that's
Russian
why I say I
weapons.
don't judge them. So they have to be well armed because they have no choice but to be, because this shit is getting crazy. And even though Russia and Algeria work closely, Algeria has chastised Russia for and Mali for getting too close to those countries too. So it shows you that Algeria, even though they work with Russia, they're not their lackeys. Do you get my point? They're concerned about the region. The only thing that I would say is that Algeria does tend to have some hate towards Morocco and Morocco to them. So that's another problem, which those two countries have to blame for that, their rivalry with each other. And then, especially over that Western Sahara. So you're right. Overall, they do have to spend, but they have to be careful. And we know that people are saying that the price of natural gas is going down, but I don't think they have any issues, because unless Russia and Europe get back together as friends, or not as friends, get back into business of gas, there will always be demand um, for Algerian gas, even if the price goes down, because those carbons are important. Because I don't think Europe is going to go green. They can't go green. Europe is cold, and they don't have natural gas from Europe, and they're not. Their economies aren't building alternative energy. So to me, green is a lie. So as long as there's not going to be a green revolution in Europe, for natural for alternatives to fossil fuels, I think this gas is going to still be a big thing for Algeria. Although, if I were Algeria, make sure that they diversify their economies the way that UAE and the Arab countries are, and not just use your money for military. Also use it for technology and things, and also try to find other things you can trade, or that you can use for trade, other resources, mental resources as well as physical resources, or the ability to build factories and produce the way Germany did, so that you diversify your economy and it stays strong. What are your thoughts, Kunle?
Yes, it's important to do these things. And if you look, the problem that the West are having right now is that they become lackadaisical and lost in their own vanity. Look at what's happening in France now. Niger supplied 30% of all of France's power needs via their uranium, which they were selling. France was buying it at 2 cents a pound and selling it at $200 a pound. And it was on condition of their sovereignty that they were allowed to do these deals and deposit 80% of their wealth in France. This is all connected. It's like a form of economic slavery that is existing up until today in these countries. These kind of things, we don't, I mean, this is from 1920s that these laws were written. And it's not just Niger. I think Algeria and this country, the Suez Canal, yes, Egypt, all these countries were beholden. Are you still there?
Yeah. Oh, yes. I'm there. Hold
Oh
on.
yeah, all these countries were beholden to these what I would call barbaric colonial, neo-colonial, and old school colonial rules that did not really give you the true sovereignty that you are supposed to be allowed. And there is a wind of change now. The fact that Algeria is using Russian weapons tells you that they're now beginning to learn to arm themselves in different ways in order to fight these scourges. And Algeria is actually a very well run, well organized country. So they will be more likely to know what to do to protect their borders. Europe, as a whole, needs to bandy around themselves and keep an eye on what they're doing in their countries. I don't know how they're going to now work and co-manage and exist. The EEC is the biggest market, but it has to find a way for it to coexist and be valuable beyond just might is right and threatening people, saying that we're the
Hey,
best at organized
problem
violence.
is, let me tell you what the biggest problem is that the U.S. dollar is the hegemon of the world, even though it's beginning to fall. And the U.S. is a white supremacist country, and seems like it's willing to destroy the world, especially the Jewish bankers and the rich guys, because they'll go into the mountains to destroy the world rather than to see BRICS rise and to see other countries no longer be dependent on America through no longer be under America's power through their military power, which is why you see how many people getting killed in Palestine, which is why you see them now giving a Nobel Prize to a lady who's going to invite the U.S. to try to destroy Venezuela. they're trying to destroy Haiti. So what you're seeing all over the world is that the U.S. is taking its dirty hands and trying to kill people and destroy things out of its wrath. So what it's doing is making Europe do things which don't make sense for Europe. It doesn't make sense for Europe not to have Russian natural gas. Now that Europe is getting gas from Algeria, you would think that they would want Northern Africa to be stable so that they can continue getting the natural gas. Because if Algeria goes to war with Morocco and the Sahel gets messed up and there's a war, Europe will go into an ice age and they won't be able to survive. So it seems like Europe's leaders are willing to sacrifice Europe's people so that they can benefit. Because if there's a nuclear holocaust or a war and everybody dies, the bankers already have where they're going to stay. You understand what I'm trying to say, Kule? What are
Yeah.
your thoughts? Yeah. And this
Yeah.
ties in with Algeria is doing the right thing, but we're just making the comment about how Europe is not looking in its best interest. They need to have a stable Africa, and they also need to realize that they can't take African resources, like you say, for 22 cents and sell it for 200. They have to work with Africa fair, and they will still do well. Europe has an advantage over Africa in technology right now because they've been living off of African resources for 300 years, and they've built education, which is better. But they have to learn to live and let live. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Yes, it's not only that. What I've noticed about Europe that is becoming increasingly alarming is the declining birth rate of those countries. And the only
Yeah.
reason why we're not noticing that is because of the immigration into Europe and America
Yeah.
from these very countries that they call shithole countries that they try to dominate. They are now being taken over. It's sort of like when like a hornet invades a tiny little bee's nest and can kill 100 bees, and then suddenly this big hornet suddenly gets overrun by these little bees, and that's what's happening to the European population.
Yeah.
You know, they spread
And
out, they
also,
had large armies, they held vast. The British Empire was the largest empire in the history of the world. No, they owned a third of the planet, and no empire has ever been as big before or since. And now they are coming to reap the whirlwind, because if you cannot provide basic justice to the common man under your empire, it will fall. And that is what is
yeah,
happening now.
and this is why I'm predicting that America is going to fall. And let me tell you the countries that are going to do well. You already see it. Spain. Spain gets that gas from Algeria. So now if Europe wants that gas, it has to go through Spain. Spain is not really involved in all this NATO bullshit and all of that. Spain is the only country in Europe which wants to really put hard sanctions on what you call it,
And
on Israel.
it's
But
Italy
I'm
as well.
going to argue that they're doing it. Spain isn't doing it because they love the Palestinian people. They're doing it because of what you said. The Spanish leaders and the Spanish community knows that if they don't have a just if they don't have a just system internally and externally, if Spain is a hegemon and an empire, it's going to fall because being part of an empire means you're part of a type of system which is ruthless, and when people turn on you, you have no power. Also, this is why Spain is letting people come. If I want to go to Spain and get a citizenship now, I can. Whether you're from America or from Nigeria or whatever, they're bringing in immigrants. They're saying, please, please come, because they know that they need the numbers to build their economy, and they don't mind being outnumbered because Spanish culture has always been passive. It's not trying to tell people be like us. It's just say, hey, let's all relax a little bit. You get what I'm trying to say, Kunle? Yeah.
Well, Spanish people are quite racist, though.
No, no, they may be racist, but here's the thing. No, they may be racist, but here's the thing. No, no,
My
the
personal
racism in
experience
Italy,
is horrible.
no, the racism in Italy is worse. What I'm trying to say is that in Spain they may be racist, but overall there's enough of a populist movement in there which says, hey, no, our law, even though they're racist, you don't hear the Spanish people saying change the immigration laws. That country has the least. They have it like all of Europe, but they have the least anti-immigrant stance. Also, Portugal. Portugal is even more liberal than Spain for bringing in foreigners. But the
Portugal
reason
is
they're doing
kind
it,
of, Italians aren't as racist as the Spanish. The Spanish are really bad. Only the Arabs are worse than the Spanish.
okay, well, let me put it like this: in Italy, immigrants are treated worse than they are in Spain. That may not be because of racism. It may be because of economics. Do you see what I'm saying? Right now,
Bad, though.
right now in Europe, Spain and Portugal are the most immigrant friendly. What I mean by immigrant friendly is that the laws make it easy for immigrants to come in and do well, and there hasn't been a revolt by the people about it.
I
So,
don't
so
know.
Spain.
Spain
No,
and
no,
Italy.
I've done my research. I did my research before the show to verify. And
Okay.
what I'm saying, Spain. Look at the Spanish team. Have you noticed they have a guy from Ghana? They have Spain needs they need people. So even if they're racist, they have no choice but to take immigrants in. So what I'm saying is the
Okay.
Spanish.
They have a more aggressive immigrant policy than Italy. I would agree with you on that.
Yeah,
because I
in
don't
Italy,
know about
when you go there, I know a lot of Africans who live in Italy. It's not that they're being kicked out, but they have to be there illegally and they have to hide. They may be treated well by people, but they don't get their documents. They don't get all those things unless they marry Italian woman or Italian man. So, but Spain and Portugal have a very relaxed policy, but it's because they need the numbers. Yeah, you have
yeah,
to remember Spain.
really that their people are cool with it. But yeah, Spain may have better policies.
Yeah, but
But
think about it. The people, some of their people may be against it, but you have to remember the ruling party in Spain. I mean, the people in power are the leftists. Look at, for example, not Spanish. Why is it you say Spanish people are racist? Then why were there so much protest
it's
for
just my
the
personal
Palestine thing?
experience of them growing up and going to school with them and going to their country
Oh
for
yes,
holiday.
you're looking at the
I've
elite
just
Spanish.
experienced a lot more in. I've been to Spain, I've been to Italy, I've been to Greece, and where I noticed the worst of it was Spain. In my personal travels and experiences, the Spanish were the worst.
Oh, you have to remember things have changed. Right now, Spain, right? Half of the population in Spain is brown now. Do you get my point? There's so many people from Morocco.
That might
Someone
make
said,
it worse because the English got more racist when they had too many black people. They were less
yeah,
bad when I was there. They got worse
yeah,
now than in the
but
90s.
what I'm trying to say is that in a couple of years there will be In fact, there were never any white Spanish anyway. Spanish people always are they're descendants of Moors. But let me look it up. Spain's immigration
The
policy.
white people, Javier Huarte, that went to school with me, blonde hair, blue eyes. Botin looked
Oh yeah,
like a
you were
Mexican.
talking about the Basque.
Looked very
See, that's
white
the
too.
small people. That's the smaller. Yeah, those were the from the elite. It's just like you saying that all the Brazilian people are white. Well, but when you go to Brazil, it's mostly black people. But the ruling class in Brazil is white. So the ruling class in Spain, even in Italy, the ruling class tends to be less tan. Because if you go to Italy, Southern Italians look more like Spanish or Mediterranean people.
That's because of the Moors. You know, the Moors that came from the south to take over. You know, the Moors controlled Sicily for 800 years.
Okay, so Kunle, here it is. AI. Spain's immigration policy is focused on simplifying the path to legal residency and work permits, especially for those already in the country, to address labor shortages and economic growth. That's it. So whether they hate these people, they need them for economic
Oh yeah,
growth.
the Spanish
Yeah.
embassy is right on the street where I live. I drive past it every day for school run, and there's a queue that stretches every day. It's
I'm
always
trying to
a
go.
huge queue
Yeah.
there.
But Nigeria has a bad name though. So they're like, no Nigeria, no Nigeria, no Nigeria. Yeah, our name is so bad. It's you from Morocco, come. So I'm from
Oh
Togo.
dear.
Come, Togo. I'm from Zimbabwe. I'm from South Africa. Come. Nigeria, no Nigeria.
I think I'm defending Italy because a very close friend of mine, there's Italian, that went to my church, white guy, and he died. He was the same age as us. And we used to take Bible class together. Tragically, was killed when jogging in
Ah,
Ikoyi.
hit
And
by a
I
car.
just spent, and his wife and his kids, well, I used to teach his kids, and they all really liked me. So that I was like, we did
Yeah.
something in church, and they were
No,
crying and all that.
Italians,
So every
in
time
general, Italians.
I remember my friend, and I cry a bit. So I'm not being totally professional
Well,
when
I think
criticizing.
Italians are more cosmopolitan than Spanish people. You get my point.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they get, but in general, Spain is the place to go if you're an immigrant right now. I notice I'm saying right now, and also going back to our thing, they're getting that gas from Morocco. They're the first stopping point. So, and if you notice, and now in a world that's moving towards commodities, countries like Spain, their economy is going to get stronger. Countries like England and France, which don't have farming and commodities and aren't linked as closely to Africa as Spain is by geography, are going to struggle. So we're seeing a change in the economic system. What do you thought then will stop? Yeah.
Yes, the changes are coming, and they are coming thick and fast. I do not know what is becoming of the world. Human migration is a natural thing. You can't stop
Oh
it.
yeah,
And,
yeah,
even those that don't want it, they don't realize that their countries are being propped up by the very immigration that they're standing against. Their populations are getting older. Japan is now having to import people from abroad because they're having schools that are closing down because there are not enough students in them. And their old people's homes are getting overfull because people are living to older ages and there's not enough people to take care of them
yeah.
because their populations are shrinking. Korea has a birth rate of less than one child per the average woman. Their country is shrinking. All these countries, all these first world countries, in the next 5 to 10 years, they're going to completely reverse all their immigration laws. Just watch. because they're going to have to. No
You have
matter
no
what
choice.
goes on, they have no choice but to do so because their
Yeah,
populations are shrinking and they can't reverse it.
I agree. So I'm about to head out now. In about 10, 20 minutes, in about 15 minutes, I'm doing with Afolabi. Echo Stone said this guy is the best, is the GOAT now, Verstappen. So I'm doing a show with Afolabi comparing Verstappen to Senna and Schumacher. Do you want to jump in? If you want to jump in, you can. If not, I'll just do it with Afolabi. Yeah.
What time?
Uh 12 minutes, 13 minutes, yeah. It's
Um,
7:30. That's too soon? Yeah.
um,
No, don't
yeah,
worry.
yeah, yeah. Okay, okay,
Okay.
okay.
Okay, I'll send you the link. Okay, thanks.
All
It
right,
won't be a long show though. Okay, thanks. Okay.
all right. No problem.